here in order to account for that 170 difference. Now, ultimately that 170 difference is going to be split between the capital accounts. But I'm first going to record it as we generally would record it in a normal transaction, and that is that we would have a gain or loss on the transaction. In this case, we have a gain. So the gain represented by brackets. If we had a loss, it would be a debit balance. If we have a gain, it's going to be a credit balance. We're going to have a gain here because, of course, the cash was bigger than the inventory was on the books for. So that's going to go to this account, gain or loss. I'm going to copy that on the sale, copy that, put that in J6, right click and paste it 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to call this the plug formula. I could just type it in there. It's going to be a credit of 170, but I'm going to do it with what I call a plug formula, and that's going to be, instead of equals, it's going to be the negative SUM of the 700. I highlight this whole square. So it's going to be the 700 minus the 530. Then we're going to say that, take that and multiply it times -1, meaning flip the sign so that we have 170. We can also see it this way. If I add up these two, now we have the 700 on the credit side, 700 on the debit side. If we were to take the debits minus the credits, they add up to 0. All right, let's post this out and see if it does what we think it should do. And of course, what do we think it should do? The cash should go up, the inventory should go to 0, and then we're going to post the difference to the gain, which will have an effect on net income. Okay, so we're going to go to the P4, and we're going to post this. We're going to see what happens from the beginning to the ending balance in this section. So we're going to say this equals and point to this 700,000. That's a debit. This is a debit. It's going to make the debits go up in the debit direction and put us out of bounds by the 700. Then we're going to go to P5. We're in P5. We're going to say equals, point to the 530. This is a debit. That's a credit. They are opposites. Therefore, this is going to go down to 0. And then we're out of bounds by the 170, which will be the gain or loss. So we're going to go to P12, and we're going to say equals and point to this 170, which is a gain. And that will increase this to 170, put us back in balance, put net income up. Net income is going up, and that is represented by a credit. Credits are kind of like good on the income statement, meaning it's a gain, not a loss. Now, the next step on this is that, remember, over here we allocated this information to the capital accounts. So now this is kind of like the closing process we're going to talk about here. And instead of closing it out to the income summary and whatnot, we're just going to close this gain now out to the capital accounts here in accordance to their profit sharing here. So we're going to close this gain out. So this gain has a credit. We need to make it go to 0. How do we make something go down? We do the opposite thing to it, which in this case would be a debit. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to right click and copy that. Skip a line for a new journal entry. The debit will go on top. So we'll put that right here in cell J8. Right click and paste 1, 2, 3. All right, the debit is going to be for 170,000. That's what we need to make this go to 0. Then we're going to need a credit of 170. What are we going to credit? The capital accounts. We're going to credit the capital accounts in accordance with their profit sharing percentage over here. So we're going to have to copy these. I'm going to copy these capital accounts. And of course, what is that going to do to the capital accounts? It's going to increase the capital accounts. We're going to credit them, making them go up because we're going to do the same thing to them, which makes sense because this is, of course, a gain, which will increase the amount that is owed to the owners, being the capital accounts. So we will copy these. I highlight all 3 of them, highlight all 3, right click and copy. And I'm going to paste them right here. Paste them in J9, right click and paste 1, 2, 3. We're in the credit side. Now we could just list these numbers, the 85, the 56, the 28, 33. I'm going to recalculate them just so we can see the calculation one more time. So the calculation would be, I'm going to say a negative to make it a credit, and then point to this 170. We need that 170 to be allocated times, in the case of the case capital count, times this 50%, and enter. So it's the 170 times that 50, and then I'm going to do the same for C, negative instead of equals to make it a bracketed number, negative of this 170 times, and then I'm going to point to this this 33.33 and enter. And once again, note that that number will be slightly different if we did it in a calculator. So we want to point to this cell because that cell really has 2 over 3 plus 2 plus 1, 2 over 6, not 33.33 because it's really 33.33333. So then we're going to be down here in L11 and we're going to say negative and point to the 170 times and then pointing to this 16.67 for M. And let's see if that did what we think it should. Do the credits add up to the debits? The credits add up to 170, which equals the debits. That's good. If we highlight all of them, the debits and the credits, that means then that the debits minus the credits are now 0, which that's good. That means that they're equal. Okay, so let's post this out then. We're going to post the gain to the gain. So we're going to post the gain down here. We're going to post it to the blue area. There's already something in there. Therefore, what we're going to do is double click on that and go to the end of it. I can see, of course, that this gain account is there. I'm going to go to the end. I'm always going to select plus when we post to this trial balance section. Then we'll post this 170. That's a credit. This is a debit. Those are opposites. Going to make this go down to 0, which is what we wanted to happen. Now we're out of balance here. We're then going to post these to the capital accounts, which will increase the capital accounts. We'll start off with K's capital account. Here's K's capital account. Here's where we're going to post it in cell P7 equals, and we're going to post this 85 credit. That's a credit. This is a credit. It's going to make the credit go up in the credit direction. Then we're going to go to P8. Same thing. We're going to say this equals, and we're going to post this C's capital account and post the number 56667. That's a credit. This is a credit. It's going to make the credit go up in the credit direction. And then we're going to do this one more time. We've got M's the last one. M is here. We're going to post it to the blue section in P9. We're going to say this equals, point to the 28333. That'll bring the capital account up and put us back in balance. So now we've basically closed out net income and posted it to the capital account. These are our new capital account balances represented in the trial balance. And these are the capital account balances represented in our little worksheet over here. So now we've sold the inventory. The next step, again, before we start paying off the capital account balances, we probably want to pay off the liabilities first. So we'd like to pay off the third parties, then we'll be left with just cash and capital accounts, and we'll just be able to pay off the capital accounts at that point. So now we would like to pay off the accounts payable. So I'm going to do that with the worksheet first. And again, some people like the worksheet better. Some people like to think about it in terms of the trial balance. We'll look at it in both these ways. But if we look at this worksheet, we see that we have 240 in terms of payables. We're going to pay that off. That needs to go to 0. So I'm going to say this is going to go down by 240. We're going to pay off the liabilities. What are we going to pay it with? We're going to pay it with cash. So we're going to go over to the cash here, and we're going to say this is going to go down by 240. So there we have this. And notice what we're looking at. We're just looking at this line. This is where we're at. I'm not worried about any of this stuff up here. That's in the past. We're on this balance. We're going to record this activity, and then we'll bring the new balance down here. That's not a shoe or anything. It's the new balance that we have on our worksheet. Okay, so that means that the cash is going to go down from the 8825 minus the 240. So let's do that. This equals the 8825, and I'm going to say plus the 240. Why? Because we put the 240 in here, or I did, as a negative number. Therefore, it's going to be this plus a negative number. And if that's confusing, just note that obviously if we went the wrong way, if I delete that and I said this equals this minus the 240, then it's going to come up to something that doesn't make any sense. It's like, well, it went up. I wanted it to go down. So that means, well, we went the wrong way. So I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to say this equals the 8825 plus the negative that's in there, 240. And that will make it go down and say, that looks reasonable because it went down, which is what we wanted. So then we're going to go over here and do the same thing. There's not any inventory at this time. We know that the accounts payable, same thing. So liability went from here plus this number, which is a negative, and therefore it took it down. There will be no effect on the capital account, so we're just going to bring down the capital accounts. Capital account still is this number. For K, capital account still is this number. For C, and the capital account for M is still this number of the 195,333. So there we have this. let's do that same information in terms of the trial balance and a journal entry. So note, we're going to do the same thing. Again, a lot of people like me would rather think through this in terms of a trial balance rather than the worksheet, because we can see here what we're going to have happen and go through basically our list of questions. First question is, we can think about, is cash affected in this transaction? Yeah, cash is affected. We're paying cash in order to pay off the accounts payable. So we're paying the liabilities. Therefore, cash needs to go down. Cash has a debit balance represented by the fact that it does not have brackets around it. How do we make it go down? We do the opposite thing to it as what it is. So that's a debit. We're going to credit cash. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to skip a line so it's on a new entry. And then I'm going to skip another line because I want the cash or the credit to be on the bottom. So we're now in J14. Right click and paste 1, 2, 3. Then we're going to go to the credit side. So we're in L14. And the credit will be for the cash that we paid of the 240. That's how much we owed in the liability. So we're going to say negative, right, 240,000 to represent the credit. And there we have that. Then we're going to debit something, of course, and the thing that we are going to debit will be the accounts payable. Why? Because we're paying it off. And we can see that accounts payable has a credit balance in it, and we need to make it go down. Therefore, we're going to do the opposite thing to it, which will be a debit. So we're going to debit accounts payable. We're going to right click, going to copy the accounts payable. Going to put that in cell J13, right click and paste it 1, 2, 3. And that will be for the 240. All right, let's post this out and see if it does what we expect it to do. What do we expect it to do? Well, I think the accounts payable should go down to 0 because we paid it off. And then the cash will go down by the amount that we paid off for the accounts payable being 240. All right, so let's do that. So accounts payable is the first account. Here's accounts payable. We're going to post that to the accounts payable in the blue section. So we are in P6. We're going to say that equals. We're going to point to the 240. So we have the credit, and then minus the debit will bring the balance down to 0. And now, of course, we're out of balance. Now we're going to post the cash on the credit side to the cash here in the entries section. So I'm going to double click on that and go to the end of it. We can see the other cash account that is in there. We're going to say plus and then point to this amount here, which is negative or in brackets for Excel. That's a credit. This is a debit. Those are opposites. It's going to make the cash go down. And that puts us back in balance here. So we can see the same information that we have here. We've got the cash of 642.5, 642.5. Then the capital accounts of these respectively for K, C, and M. And we have those amounts here. So we are tied out with both trial balance and in terms of the worksheet. And now we can finally pay off these partners that keep on asking us to pay them off, because now we have cash of 642.5, and we simply have capital accounts now that add up to 642.5. So now it is safe for us to take that money, pay off the partners, because we're not going to run into the problem of coming up short because of the sale of the inventory not matching or something like that. Therefore, we can do that first with a worksheet. So if we go to the worksheet over here, we're going to say, okay, the cash is going to go completely down. We're going to pay all of it off. So I'm going to say negative 642.5. And we're going to reduce the capital accounts by what is in there. So we owe K the same, 178,000. We owe C 269,167. We owe M 195,333. And we should end up with zeros at the end of the day. Also want to note that many times when we think of these capital accounts, it gets really easy for us to start thinking that the capital account balance should always be in proportion to the ratios for profit sharing. That's not going to be the case. The capital accounts will not generally match the profit sharing, because the profit sharing is based on how much should be allocated for profit and loss. However, what's not going to be in that percentage is the amount of draws. So partners do not have to draw money out in accordance with the profit sharing. So some partners may draw out more or less, and therefore the capital accounts will not be in relation to the ratio necessarily, most likely not, but the income allocation will be in this format. So note that, just be aware of that. That's a common question that comes up. So then we're going to, of course, have the 642.5 plus the 642.5. Once again, this is this plus a negative number, which makes it go down to 0. And if we'll do that all the way across, this is going to be the 178 plus this number, which is a negative, making it go down to 0. And obviously, if it went up and doubled itself, we know we went the wrong way. So then we're going to do the same thing here. This equals this number plus this negative number, makes it go down to 0. And then this equals, I'm hitting plus instead of equals. That sometimes is a little bit faster if you want to, because if you have a 10 key on the side, plus will also do a formula. So you can say this number plus this number and enter. All right, so we're going to do that same thing in terms of a trial balance. And once again, I tend to prefer the trial balance. I can see what's in the trial balance right now. I've got cash and I've got capital accounts. And we can ask our question, well, what's going to happen to cash? Is cash affected? Yeah, we're paying cash. We're going to pay it all off. We're going to pay all the cash out to the owners of the partnership. So cash has a debit balance. We need to make it go down to 0. How do we make it go down? We do the opposite thing to it, which in this case would be a credit. So I'm going to copy in 4, copy that, and I'm going to try to put it on the bottom, which is a bit of a guessing game, but I'm going to say we're going to skip a line, and then we have 3 capital accounts that are going to go on top, so I'm going to skip it 1, 2, 3 more lines, and then I think it should be right here down in J19 in order to put it on the bottom. And once again, putting it on the bottom is just a convention. It doesn't really have to be that way if we put the debit. If we put the credit on top, it really wouldn't matter, but some people, it really don't like that. And some software, if you're using a software in a school or something and they use some type of software that's going to automatically grade it, then you could get marked off if you do that. But just realize in practice, in most accounting software, if you put the debit or credit in a different order, does not always, it shouldn't make any problem. And if you are in a complicated journal entry that it's going to be, and you're going to go back to it at a later time, you may want to put it in whatever order that would make most sense to you when you go back and audit it. But I'm going to put this on the bottom, right click and paste it 1, 2, 3. We're going to credit it by the amount that's in there, which is a credit negative 642.5. And then we're going to allocate that to the partners, K, C, and M, in accordance with what is in there. So I'm not going to allocate it in accordance to their profit sharing. We're just going to pay off what is in those accounts. We're not allocating net income in this case. We're paying off the cash. So there's a difference in there. When we allocated net income, we allocated it based on the income allocation. When we pay off the capital accounts, they can draw out whatever they want or whatever the terms are, but theoretically they can draw out the balance that is in their capital account. So I'm going to copy that. We're going to paste that right here in J16, right click and paste it 1, 2, 3. And I'm just going to put in there right down the line, we're going to need debits of 178,000. We're going to need a debit for C of 269,167. We need a debit for M of this 195,333. All right, so now let's see if we are in balance. Do our debits equal our credits? We're going to add up the debits. I'm just going to highlight them. Look at the taskbar down here, 1425. That's what adds up to the credit, 1425. We highlight all of them, debits minus the credits, add up to 0. Therefore, we are in balance, and we can post this out. So first, we're going to post K's capital account. So here's K's capital account. Here's K here. And so there is something in it. Therefore, we're going to double click on it. I can see what's in there, this account. I'm just going to add to it. We're going to go to the end of it, say plus, and point to this 178. What will happen here? It's going to go down to 0. Then we're going to go to the C's capital account. So here's C's capital account. Here's C's capital account. Here's where we're going to post it in the blue area. There's something in there already. We're going to double click on it, go to the end of it, and then say plus, then point to this 269,167. That's a debit. This is a credit. Those are opposites. Therefore, it's going to make it go down to 0. Then we are going to do the same thing for M. Here's M here. Here's where we want to post it. There's the posting area. We're going to double click on that. Go to the end. Select plus. Point to the 195,333. That's a debit. This is a credit. Therefore, it's going to go down to 0 because they are opposites. Then we just need to post the cash out. So here's cash. Here's cash. We're going to post it in the cash area. So I'm going to double click on it. We can see a few things in there. And so this is in there. This is in there. we're on the end of it, we're going to say plus, and then point to this 642.5 and enter. Makes the cash go down to 0. So now we have now liquidated the company, taking everything from the trial balance down to 0. Remember, the process of the liquidation will be that we want to sell the assets represented by just inventory in this simplified example. Then we want to allocate the gain or loss to the partnership, partners in the partnership. And then we want to take that cash that we paid, that we got from the sale of the assets, pay off the liabilities, then pay the capital accounts. Why do we do it in that order? So that we don't get into a situation where we pay one particular partner and then realize that the inventory is not worth, or whatever assets we have is not worth what we thought it was worth, and then get into a sticky situation there.